Okay, the next thing you have to determine is what are you going to do for your floor and what are you going to do for your walls. Let's start with the walls because they just might be a little bit easier. You probably already have something in mind for the wall. So I'm going to erase this wall word just so that I have that area to work with. And I hope that this is, you can see this. I might darken this up just a little bit more so you can see it. I realize that my lines in the last one might be a little bit light. You should draw lightly because obviously you're going to be erasing things as you go. So make sure that you draw lightly so that you can just see your lines. Okay, so first of all, if you plan on doing a bank of lockers, so here I have a bank of lockers on this side. I think I'm going to put a bank of lockers on this side now. Take a look and notice that this is the floor. The lockers do not sit directly on the floor. Usually the lockers are raised a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide how high do I want my lockers to be. So I'm going to just decide, okay, I want from the floor to where the lockers start to be about that high. So then I'm going to take my ruler, and this is just same thing with perspective. I'm going to pretend this is like the corner of my edge. I'm going to bring this back to my vanishing point. Now I can draw a straight line here because I know that it's a permanent line. Now I also know that the lockers are not going to be all the way to the ceiling. There's usually a space up here. So I have to determine how tall are my lockers going to be. So maybe my lockers are this tall, okay, from here to here. So again, I'm going to line up my top of my locker to the vanishing point, and I'm going to draw a straight line across. I'm only going to draw, oops, I just made those lockers way too short. I think I thought that was my dot, and it wasn't. My dot's actually up here, and actually I'm going to raise it up even further because I feel like the lockers might be even taller than that if they're that close, or maybe somewhere in between. I don't know, I'm having a hard time. You decide how tall you want your lockers to be. So I'm going to use this dot here, and that's going to go down. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so now your next step is going to be to show how thick the lockers are. Now, something you need to remember, we still have perspective happening here because this is all going back to the vanishing point. So take a look at my lockers here. Notice that these lockers are kind of wider. They're kind of equal in size. And what happens to the lockers as they go down? If you say that the lockers get skinnier as they go down, you're right. So notice that as they get further away, we don't see as much of them. So they get a little bit thinner. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm purposely going to flip my paper over because I want to be able to see how wide that locker is going to be. I also need to make sure that we don't do this. Okay, this is a very common mistake. We talked about parallel lines. The lines that you draw inside here to show the edge of the locker have to be parallel to this line and have to be parallel to the side of your paper. So if this is going vertically in this direction and the side of your paper is going vertically in that direction, your locker has to be vertical too. So if you line your ruler up and you kind of bring it back, making sure that you have equal distance all the way through here. Here's locker number 1. Move my ruler over. You can keep the first couple probably fairly consistent in size, but then as you go back, you should start thinking about making your lockers look a little bit thinner as you go back, because they are going to get smaller as you go. And that may be, so there's kind of my bank of lockers. I also might erase this. I don't think I did it over here. So I probably, well, maybe I don't have to, but I'm thinking I probably didn't need a locker back here because there's usually space between the locker and the end of the hallway, right? The locker doesn't necessarily get jammed up right up against the other wall. So I probably should end my bank of lockers there. So I'm going to end this bank of lockers right here. So now, if you wanted to add this little venting space right here, you have to decide where's that venting space going to be? And again, how many little slots do you want? So if you want like 4 little slots, I might do 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got 4 little slots. I have those dots equal distance. So now for each of these, I'm going to put my ruler up against the dot, and I'm going to come back. And I'm going to do that for each of the lockers. And I want you to notice that, again, as I go back, it's going to get, those little lines are going to get smaller and smaller because they're further away, and you made your lockers skinnier. So notice that I am always keeping my lining up with the vanishing point. And when I get back to the other lockers, it might look like these are kind of on top of one another, but that's okay. So now that you have this, you've got your basic lines in, now you're going to go in and you are going to, again, use parallel lines. And I'm going to keep my ruler the same as the edge of my paper. And I'm just going to end, and then anything that's left over, I'm going to erase. So does this make sense? What you're seeing here? Let's get rid of that other line. Okay, so you have something that looks like that. And again, if you are trying to show a locker door, here is where the locker little latch is. Again, how long is that going to be? I'm going to go ahead, and here's my first latch. This is going to go back. And this is going to go back. And like I said to you before, this is really important. And then I'm going to go back in, and I'm just going to draw. My ruler is parallel to this line. And I'm just adding and erasing the lines I don't need, so that this becomes my little locker area. And then when you get down here, these are going to get skinnier. Okay, are you kind of seeing the locker? And if you want to, all I did was I just kind of went in here and I just kind of put like a little square, just to kind of show where the little lock and the little hook would be. And then when you get down here, you might just literally be putting just a little dot in there just to kind of see that. So that's how you do a bank of lockers. If you want to do windows, then you can I'll show you how to do a window, and I'll show you how to do a doorway. So why don't you go ahead, well, maybe, yeah, so there's lockers. Let's leave the video at that. Here's lockers. The next video I will show you will be how to do windows, and then the floor.